roll call. Commissioner Lee,
Here.
Commissioner Fox,
Present.
Commissioner Herrera,
Present.
Commissioner Huppertz,
Present.
and Commissioner Turner,
Present.
and Commissioner Felton's here. So the first item, as usual, on the agenda is approval of the agenda. So I trust you've all had a chance to look at it. If you want to take one last look, suggest any changes you might feel are warranted, and I'll wait for a motion to go ahead and approve it, with or without changes.
I motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Moving on to the next item, and Commissioner Lee's here, so this could take a little while. He's going to check our commas and stuff, right?
No, I spent this afternoon, I read every piece of paper that was in this.
Uh-oh.
I did too.
I promise not to open my mouth after that.
The next item is approval of the minutes, the draft Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes for May 28th, and take a last look at them again. If anybody has changes to make, corrections, let us know, and then a motion to approve, and we'll move on from there.
Chairman, I do have, I don't know if it really belongs here, but it might belong in the minutes. The changing of our wording on the few strategies and added 2 amendments to goals and objectives. Maybe I'm in the wrong place. Anyway, no, we discussed about one that we wanted to remove, and it was the town will work with local water utility to current and future water needs of commercial areas. I thought that ought to be in the minutes, because the other night when it was presented at council, I don't think that was what was presented, from my recollection. Was there 2 of them that were taken out?
The other thing was just adding the hyphen. So remove,
So we were talking about the other night, wastewater, which to me, that wasn't correct. We weren't,
no, it was water.
it was water, but that's what Maida presented. So that might have thrown people off a bit, and then she didn't remember why, and it was probably because she was on the wrong one. It's objective 2 under goal C. And if that's not in the minutes somewhere, I didn't see it. I thought it was this first part.
It's not in there.
It might ought to be added.
Okay,
I think so, because we did discuss it
okay.
specifically.
So I'm going to suggest that when we get around to voting on this, we honor what's in the reference guidebook that we're going to look at tonight, and I'm going to ask that any commissioner who was not at the last meeting not vote on the minutes that are in front of us. Okay? It's not illegal, just kind of slightly awkward.
I think that we've already been doing that. not voting.
Okay.
So I move that we approve these minutes with the correction that I stated about goal C, objective 2, that would be taken out, that the town will work with local water utility to current and future water needs of commercial areas. That'd be removed from the comp plan. So other than that, I move that we approve.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the minutes with an adjustment to them. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. So that takes us to our first discussion item for the evening. Further discussion on an industrial zone. So Tanya, do you want to give us some background on how the changes went over the last couple of weeks?
So I should have put the changes in blue.
It's like you did a lot of work.
Yeah, so I tried to flesh out what I thought that could pertain to a master plan for here. I think there might be some mistakes as far as acreage goes. But I tried to go through and pick what I thought would work. I'm wondering what you guys thought. It's hard to see the master plan that you're used to, and you're trying to warp your mind into thinking just industrial, so you really have to watch what we put. But I still think that, a lot of things pertain to it, like the water supply plan, liquid waste disposal plan, things like that. I think that's important. Phasing schedule, definitely, we could use that. I still think that it's important to have open space in that area, so it's just not all concrete, and so I put that in there. The written statement about protection of cultural properties, I don't see a problem with that one either. This one I thought was really important, on the excess of 160 acres, and we can even change that acres to something smaller, just because the light industrial will have an impact on the area depending on what it is. But because of probably what we'll have in there is a lot of semis running back and forth. So I think we might want to talk about maybe decreasing the acres here to something, I don't know, I think maybe even 60 acres might be smart to have. I mean, gosh, any business down there could impact the neighborhood, so maybe we shouldn't even put an acreage on it. Just, a written statement regarding the anticipated impact of the zone surrounding the community. We can also put something in there, not just highways, but, roads that, if it's Bassett Road or if it's Williams Ranch or whatever the case may be.
And access roads,
Mhm.
access roads and highways.
Yeah. Of course, letter G is important. Make sure that they're the owner of the property or the appointed person. And make sure that we don't have some sort of a plant that's going to make the neighborhood not harmonious. So I think just everything that I put in there works. If there's anything extra that you guys see that I've missed, we can add that in there. It's not a problem. I brought the flash drive so we can just add it as we go.
Well, I do think that the 160 acres is too large. We need to come down with that. Or look at all of them.
One thing I was wondering on the subject of acreage is, doesn't the master plan zone category have a minimum of 10 acres?
I was going to get you.
Right. I think that was reduced from like 150 to 10 acres a few years back.
What did we have?
20.
20.
I think we went from 40 to 20, which I think 20 is probably a very manageable, smaller size.
Right.
And I'm not saying we need to be consistent with it, but just be aware that people are going to say, well, you have 20 in the master plan section and 10 in the master plan section and 20 here. So,
And we can change that to 20 in the master plan. Where's that at?
It's number F in the master plan, district standards.
Oh, I see what you're saying, because it's
Yeah.
in the master plan.
right. And, that's something that might warrant another look. You get to a certain point of smallness, and what's the point of a master plan?
It says in excess of 160 acres.
No, I was talking about the minimum allowable.
That's probably somewhere else. Where she
Yeah.
They're saying they're in excess of that, so they need to do that other stuff.
Yeah, I didn't put the district standards from the master plan in the industrial zone because up here, we kind of already listed out as, like, the development plan,
Right.
20 acres. So I didn't put that section in from the master plan into here. And if there's something in there you think we need, we
It's,
can.
it's in the black that follows our markups on the industrial zone. It's in our
The
packets
district
today.
plan is what you're saying?
Yeah, F district standards.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's where
So,
10 acres was.
And
The
it-
reason
yeah.
I put section 24 in there, master plan, behind the industrial zone in your packets, was so you could see if there's
Right.
anything else from master plan
Right.
that you want to put in. So
But
did
that's
you
where
want to
letter
put
F,
in?
item 1 is.
Yeah, did you want to put that in there, though?
I don't know.
Okay.
We just want to be consistent, I think.
Yeah.
So now
So,
we've got a master plan for presumably mixed development that says minimum is 10, and we've got a master plan for industrial that says
Right.
minimum is 20.
And I
Which may be quite
changed-
reasonable, I don't know.
and I changed it to master planning, and I thought we could add something there.
Right.
Maybe even a blurb that says, not to be confused with master plan
Right.
in another area.
Right.
But the amount of land in the master, both plans might ought to be the same for consistency.
I don't know.
Well, maybe, maybe not,
Are
depending.
industrial uses bigger and more complex?
that's true.
They need more room.
Roads to move trucks in?
Yeah.
It may be that 20,
Access points,
that you wouldn't want to go smaller than 20 in
yeah.
an industrial zone.
Right.
Yeah,
And
just
I
10.
think it's 10 acres is pushing it even in a mixed residential, small commercial zone. There's just not enough land there to just develop it.
Yeah.
As mixed use or something.
Yeah, if you had, 10 acres as a minimum size, I think there would be industries that would not be attracted to that because they might have plans looking at all the space we have here, might be having other plans.
Well, there's nothing to prevent someone from going to an area zoned industrial, zoned M1, where the minimum is 20, and their plan is to build all 20, phased in over a few years, and they're going to start with the first 10.
Because we allow
And it's
phasing.
Perfectly reasonable. I don't see a need to match them up, but I do see a need to make sure that people don't confuse one with the other.
Yeah, so we probably
You said
should
the master
put,
plan was 20, and now you're saying it's 10.
yeah.
Would some of the potential confusion be be ameliorated by changing that section F, number 9, to development review of light industrial, something like development review?
So instead of calling it master planning,
Right.
well, we have development plan up here.
Okay. But something
So-
like the development review process?
Maybe so. So instead of master planning, development review process?
I still think that if you keep the words master plan in there, it's going to lead to a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
I never can type on this thing.
Mine drives me crazy because it's so sensitive, the tapping on the pointing device. It's like, does things I don't want it to do.
Okay. I also changed, thanks. I'm over here. I always have a headache when we're done here because I'm
Do you
doing
need a
this.
new eyeglass prescription?
Blow it up there, make it
I need
bigger.
new glasses.
Make
So
the screen bigger.
I took off Business Park
Okay.
because I think that was something that Sandy and Maida had a problem with. Can you just back it up just a little?
I actually don't know how, I thought I just.
I was
I
just back
was
it
not
up a little bit.
Yeah, just take that
that bar at the bottom there where it says 220, and we're just going to
Yeah.
pull it back.
Just drag it way down bottom right.
Yeah, you drive.
Okay.
Might blow your screen
Oh,
up.
there it is.
Yeah, this guy. Come on, going the other way.
There we go.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. Okay, so I took that out. Is there anything else that I missed that they weren't on board with? I think at one point Sandy said that everything should be conditional use, but I think that we all agreed that we wanted some permissive uses in there. So I don't agree with them on that. I want to leave, and they're mild things, you know, something that I don't think that we would need to really. Maybe distributors, a distributing warehouse because of traffic, maybe, but, you know, we're still going to have these rules down here where they have to explain their traffic plan to us anyway, so.
We do have a little bit of a mismatch. I looked beyond this to other ordinances today, and we have sort of a mismatch with wastewater, where printing and lithography and that kind of thing is, on the wastewater side, considered something they really want to look at, but we're calling it a permissive use. There's a little bit of things not quite lining up.
Yeah.
And then I got carried away with the periodic table of elements. I looked at the chemical list. It has drifted where hard returns are missing from where they should be. So example, it says we have to be cautious of beryllium bismuth. Beryllium and bismuth are not known to form any compounds by any chemist, whether bismuthides or bismuthates. So I think what happened is we're worried about beryllium and bismuth.
Oh, okay.
And there's a few of those. Like you have redundancy where, and I can email these to you. You have hexavalent chromium, which is a thing. Then you have chromium hexa and chromium tri. That chromium hex is the same thing as hexavalent. So there's these oddities in there where I think it's just drifted over the years from things being knocked out of place.
Right.
But the more I read, the more I went, gosh, these things have to be matched up. And we're allowing these permissive uses where you might, although wastewater was here one night going,
Yeah, and
No,
he
it's
went through
okay.
everything and was just like, I don't have a problem with anything
right.
until we get down to distilleries.
the one that really grabbed me was printing, publishing, lithography, or blueprinting, because it's specifically mentioned in the wastewater ordinance as something not to be terribly worried about, but
They do want to
to
look at it.
pay attention to.
So do you want to move that to conditional use?
Maybe it might be best with
I'm
their
just going to put a
approval.
note here.
And then I apologize to Commissioner Lee, but I just slaved over data analysis today, trying to find another word for that, because it's so, it's hard to describe what that is, and I thought, are we talking about community-based research? Or statistical analysis? Maybe both of those things. It's fine, we can leave it the way it is. I just thought if I were reading this as someone coming in to build something in this town, I probably wouldn't know what that means.
So another thing that we need to consider, we're going to jump ahead real fast, and I'm just going to touch on the slides that I printed out for you guys. We went to the Economic Summit at COG. Apparently, as you can see by the graphs, manufacturing is not going to really be a thing in New Mexico, but what we also need to be looking at is reusable energy. So, we probably need to put something in there like solar farm, wind farm, something like that. And we could even, I don't know if you wanted to put that as a permissive use or conditional use. It's not going to have any impact on wastewater plant, but,
If it's a production facility, it'll certainly have an impact on height.
right.
We had enough going around about that little wind turbine that's out by the wastewater plant.
Oh, that's what they brought up last time. We don't have anything about building heights in this,
Right, that's another thing we don't have. You're right.
remember?
So are you thinking about assembly of solar components or actual energy production?
Energy production. I think that's what we will probably get. So, do we just want to say energy production and/or energy assembly?
Well, we already have public utility use for structure as a permissive
Do
use.
you want to flesh that out a little more?
Is a 35-foot wind turbine a public utility use or structure? Is a 70-foot wind turbine?
So, we could just come right out and say solar farm or wind farm, and/or wind farm.
Wind farm's going to get interesting.
Well, and I don't know that we have the right wind for it here. Otherwise, I think they'd already be gunning for us.
That was part of the debate, and it's part of why that turbine out by the wastewater plant has telemetry equipment on it. At the time, this was like 2010, probably, the debate raged that we have gusty winds that are not good for wind production, which is probably not true, and partly because nobody knows. When they say the wind is not good here, they have inferred that from the vegetation growing here. They go, that kind of plant only grows where the winds are bad. No one's actually measured the wind.
Right. Do we have any of the data from the turbine? Whatever happened? That was part of the original grant, was they were going to collect the information.
Councilor Abrams would probably know best.
Excuse me. Was wind towers and stuff, doesn't that get over into heavy industrial, a little more than light industrial? I mean, those are
Wind
pretty-
farm?
Yeah, they're kind of big to me.
They're big.
Well, they are big.
Take up quite, usually it's a fair amount of space. I don't know.
They also do a lot of collateral damage to wildlife.
Yeah.
Well, debatable also, but there's also, there are rooftop units now. So I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, so it seems to me, we're almost arguing for this industrial zone, or what we're going to call it, that we're talking about creating our own utility there to sell to the people who bring their manufacturing facilities, or, you know, whatever they bring there. Is that the goal? Rather than have them attached to the present utility grid?
It would be one goal, I think, is what I've been hearing people who are talking about it, looking at,
Carla,
sell that. you know.
didn't they say that you could work out some sort of a deal where you get a cut from when they sell it? When the company that builds the solar farm and they sell the energy, you have to write some sort of have a contract where the town actually gets some of that money, because otherwise, what would you get from a solar farm?
I'm trying to remember. I think I remember them talking about it. It was Torrance County, it might have been a cut with the county. I don't know.
Yeah.
See, what I didn't know, or don't know, is what agreements exist or don't exist between the town of Edgewood and Central New Mexico Co-op. And they're going to defend their co-op pretty hard, I would think.
Yeah, I don't know. They also have incentives for using reusables. They don't buy my power from me. I've got 14 panels on my roof. I pay my bill with what I produce. I pay them in electricity instead of money, and then they bank what I haven't used, which is substantial. So, and I don't know what someone planning in this industrial zone would plan to do with that power. You know, if I sell my power to Central New Mexico, I get pennies per kilowatt hour. If I bank it, it's worth more like 13 cents per kilowatt hour. So there are disincentives to sell it, but there are also state incentives to build it.
And what I don't know, and I've never talked to anybody about it, is what are the reserves that central New Mexico have power-wise? Are they sufficient to handle additional loads like this? Planned additional loads like this?
I don't have any idea.
And also,
Somebody's must have thought that through somewhere.
also the maintaining of the systems has to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's the big farm in Willard, near Willard. I don't know who they sell to. Ultimately, central New Mexico doesn't generate anything.
Yeah.
They buy their power from
Tri-State?
Tri-State. So I presume whoever set up here would be selling power. You're selling it to the grid, you're selling it to Tri-State.
Yeah.
So, the question is, do we want to allow a 20 or a 40 acre solar farm or wind farm in this zone?
Right.
Certainly not as a permissive use, I would think.
No,
But
No.
No,
even
I
as a
think-
conditional use, I don't know.
I put it under conditional.
One thing that we might want to do is look at the state statute as it
Mhm.
applies to a co-op.
And the discussions that, from Edgewood with Walmart about how they were going to provide power to that facility, because that's a major chunk. And, Edgewood, central New Mexico, and Walmart must have had some kind of discussion there, because, Walmart didn't consider, or hasn't used any alternative energies, so it's totally part of some grid.
Well, it is, and they do have some power-saving mechanisms. Particularly when they redid the store, they tried to get their electrical usage down. The only real negotiations I remember happening were wastewater,
Were what?
wastewater related when Walmart came in.
Mention that, yeah.
But one thing about, I think, an argument for including this is that there is a substantial rate differential between P&M and C&M, and that, the possibility for generating power on-site, bring the cost down, might make it more attractive.
I think you're absolutely right, because C&M is for, the regular house user, paying about New York City prices on kilowatt hour, cents per kilowatt hour.
So did you want to add wind farms as well, or just keep it to
Let's put
solar?
both and think on it.
I don't know that I would call it wind farm. I
Okay.
might stay away from that word and just call it, wind and solar energy production facilities.
Okay.
That could be anything. It could be rooftop, it could be,
Right.
you're producing it for in-house use, you're producing it for sale to the grid, whatever it is, it's allowable.
Wind and solar energy, what?
Production facilities.
Thank you. Why did you type it?
And obviously, conditional use.
Right.
Yes.
If we're going to have 160 acre max or something, industrial zone, that availability of power is going to be probably a pretty big issue, I think.
Right,
You can't ignore it, that's for sure.
right. I don't think that 160 is a maximum. That's just a threshold above which they're going to need to do some extra development review, I believe.
Do you think we need to lower that number?
Do you?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it's too high.
Well, and as a conditional use, you can consider the impacts it would have, and
Right.
is it
Yes.
what you're after or
Oh, yeah.
isn't it?
Mhm.
Now, this part, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around. A worksheet demonstrating how average density shall be achieved. I'm not sure what this worksheet looks like or where you get it, but
Did you bring that over from the master
Yes.
plan section? Yeah, I recognize that.
Question.
yeah,
one is the
I don't
worksheet?
know. I
Which
mean,
one is
I
that?
think we need to know that, but I don't know where the worksheet is.
Okay, well, I have actually seen one in the past, and I don't know that I have a copy of it, but it was basically a list, of so many acres would.
I wonder
At
if
this
that's what
density.
that was from Hillcrest that we look at all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Is
it's
that
really not
less of
a,
an issue in an industrial zone? You're not
Could
trying to
be.
adhere to, a 1 acre average.
Well, I guess that's true.
Right.
What you're trying to adhere to is a percentage of open space,
Which we have that.
and probably height stipulations that need to be in here.
So we can take D out.
I think so. I think that's more appropriate for residential.
Seems like it.
That's right there. It's like under master plan. And then D, small d. No, page before.
Do you want to allow for higher buildings than what we have in the zoning ordinance, or keep it the way it is?
I think we should allow for higher.
Yeah, you probably have to. I think about the place out on Route 66 that assembles specialty cranes.
Right.
I don't know what the height of that building is, but you could have people who are doing assembly, disassembly, fabrication, who need the height. I don't know what's reasonable. 60 feet? 50 feet?
I can look at
What other places?
other places have. I'll look at that too.
Do you know what the dimensions are of that building in Los Lunas that's not tall enough for extra?
I sure don't.
Yeah, that would be interesting to know. Because it's not a small building.
I wonder if Mr. Cog would know, because don't they work with Los Lunas too?
Yeah, they do.
They do.
Yeah, maybe they know. Sandy may have a contact.
All right, is there anything else that you can see that we need to change or add? I mean, I'm sure when we do probably another 2 rounds of this. Don't you just love the industrial zone?
Eventually, we'll be back where we started.
I think
like
Glenn's
secondary
right.
quarters
That's how
all
these
over
things
again.
work. You edit until you're looking at your original again.
We say this.
I got a couple of things.
Okay.
Under F, general requirements,
Yes.
you have, on the first line, the contiguous area eligible for, and you crossed out IP and changed it to M1.
Yeah, because we're changing, instead of the whole section being IP, we're changing it to M1, because that is what is normally shown in a zoning ordinance. That's what the zoning is for light industrial, is M1.
But 3 rows down from there, you switch back to IP.
Yep.
Under development plan.
Yeah.
Oh, looky there.
You might need to do a find
Yeah,
and
forward
replace.
search.
Yeah.
I was reading this earlier today, and I was really trying to find something you screwed up.
Thank you. I'm so glad.
We're watching your
And I
back,
didn't
I
Tanya.
know.
And
At least
then
we're reading it.
Yes.
Steve didn't want
On
Jim to
the-
have all of them.
on the very last page of this section, it's under district standards F on the second page, way at the end.
Oh, okay, wait.
District standards.
Which number?
Do we have district standards?
It's under F, district standards.
Are you looking at, oh, you're looking at
Yeah,
the
it's at the
master
very
plan.
end.
That's, yeah,
That's not-
that's like the master plan. But anyway, what about it?
Oh, okay. That's not part of the section.
No,
where-
that's not,
Oh,
that's
okay.
just, that was
That's
just
the
for your
stuff we're
reference
wondering.
only to look at and see if there's anything else we need
Oh,
to flesh out of there.
okay. That's good then.
Okay,
Nothing else.
all right. Wow,
Thank you.
that's not bad.
I have a question about Section B of the under conditional uses D for setbacks. Says, "To be determined by the Planning and Zoning Commission." Do we play darts? Do we play
Yes.
pin the tail on the donkey? Do we have a spinner?
Well, they had said that night, that it should be up to the commission for the setbacks, because it depends on what it is.
Right, but I'm thinking that maybe we need some, you know, to be determined by the Planning and Zoning Commission and based upon,
You need some kind of guideline.
right,
Yeah.
what kind of
It's like,
guideline?
If big trucks, then this much.
Yeah.
Perhaps a report from the Tactical Advisory Committee?
Depending upon the business, the nature of the business, and the lay of the land.
Yeah, but I don't know what's normal for a given business, you know, we need to have a sense of that, otherwise the decision is pretty subjective.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, let's assume that we could, in the case of fire safety issues, of course, you would be talking to Renee. I think the only other thing that might come into that would be roads. So that would be, I don't know, depending on the road involved, I suppose, whether it would be the state or the local.
We have a
I'll run
line
that
to an
by-
engineer.
Sandy and Maida and see if they have some wording that would fit in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, gee, a civil engineer would probably know this.
Do you want to make some mention to the performance-based concept with this? Because that's really what we're looking at. In other words, you don't
How
have a
could
set
we-
number, you depend on the use. You know, use is called out in the design.
So what would we put in here? C, performance-based, like section, whatever, we have it. Well, we
Yes.
don't have it yet, but,
Yes.
I mean, we'll
But
do, but.
That brings up something that, when I was looking at that, I first brought it to the town for consideration. I was thinking about commercial and mixed-use residential considerations. I don't know if what's in there would map onto an industrial park or not.
I don't know that it would.
It would probably
yet it could,
depend on
though.
what's being proposed.
Yeah, it definitely depends.
Well, that's why I like the Tactical Advisory
Yeah.
Committee
Because we
idea.
could actually look at, different setbacks that we have already in the zoning ordinance and reference the performance-based setbacks if that's something that would work. Because we
You know-
do have this little tagline down here about follow all applicable town of Edgewood ordinances. So, I mean, we could say that that's part of it, the.
I wonder if this is a way to kind of incentivize someone who wants to develop in a zone like this, where if what they're proposing strikes you as a decent fit to those standards, you can say, we can fast-track the whole planning and zoning, looking at each setback thing. If you're doing this,
Yeah.
it may be something that appeals to a developer, that they don't have to spell out each and everything. They can just go, yeah, like that. And for certain kinds of developments, that might be just fine. Is that what you were thinking,
Yes.
Commissioner? And then, you could throw it out there, maybe people go, well, I'd rather lay out my own.
Right.
And have you scrutinize it one by one. Yeah, that's fine. We can do it that way, too.
Well, I know that was kind of the idea when the performance-based setback was first put into it. There were a lot of people going, huh?
Yeah.
Why? I'd just rather have a set number. I'd go look at the number and design to the number. They didn't like the loosey-goosey aspect.
Yeah.
So. And that, by the way, is true nationwide where they use performance-based criteria. Larger larger firms tend to like them better because they have the engineering staff to do it. When you're working with smaller developers, they want concrete numbers. And if they need a change, then they can always come in for a variance. Yeah, so.
Okay, so what I have to look at is the state statute, it applies for solar for a co-op, and language for raise the height restriction, and I'll ask the COG what's normally used.
And peripherally related, I'm going to send you the chemical list
Okay. You're going to give me
with
chemistry.
suggested items to scrutinize. I
Okay.
think it's out of whack.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else you guys see that I need to add,
I
delete?
can hold mine till we get to C1 and C2.
I'm going to presume, Tanya, that the discussed or mentioned technical advisory committee is going to be our way of trying to make sure that this business can get integrated into our park, you know, or we have to do something special. I mean, that's going to be quite a interesting challenge. That's going to be very valuable to us because smaller companies are going to come in, they just want to plug their stuff into the wall and, you know, they'll make a profit at that level. But if you're going to have an assembly or something like that and they need a lot of electricity, you got to integrate. That electricity just in one water, sewer, all that
Right.
has to be systemized together, so. And our control of that looks like it's going to be the TAC.
Yes.
I think we have to have some kind of organization within the city like that that can look over it. And who do we put on it? That's, you know, and where do we get the talent or what talents we need? That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, and for the TAC, you can add whoever you need in there. You can
Right.
have someone from the state, DOT, you can have someone from Central New Mexico, EMW. I mean, you can bring anybody in,
Right.
and
if you-
everybody can weigh in on it.
If you go to and look at the ordinance that creates the commission, it sort of gives the authority that you can consult with. We have the power to.
I think it'll, not only, you know, we should be able to do it, I think it's going to be darn important.
Critical.
Right. And we are putting this in the draft that the Tactical Advisory Committee is going to be written into the ordinance.
Yes, and that's what I was just thinking, we've got to go through here also and look at what needs to be added to the definitions, which one of them is Technical Advisory Committee, because
Yes.
it's not in the zoning ordinance right now. So, there's a little more work to do on this. It's not over yet.
Do we, this is crazy maybe, but do we have council have a look at it? Or do we wait till it's squeaky clean?
I was
Clean.
Because
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
probably not squeaky clean when we
It's-
think it's squeaky
yeah.
clean.
It's a little muddy still, but no, I don't want to take,
I don't think it's ready yet. I think
Okay.
we need to.
A couple more
firm up.
passes.
Yeah.
okay.
Tanya, if we had a business park sprout up on this acreage, would our sign ordinance be enough to keep it from looking real bad with everybody putting up different types and sizes and all that? Can you have a sign ordinance just for like a business park? Like everybody has to kind of conform to this so the park's going to look nice?
That would be nice.
A shared kiosk is, a possibility.
Yeah, something
It's
like
been
that.
entertained in the past, and the issue was always who's going to pay for it.
So a repeal and replace of the sign ordinance? Just kidding. I know. Everyone starts crying right away. No.
Can I do home surgery with a hot spoon instead?
I know. It would be nice to have a blurb in here where this is what's allowed in here, but I don't know how that works when you've already got a sign ordinance for the whole town.
Yeah, and my thing, I agree that it could be an issue. My thing as far as signage and commercial or industrial goes is the reliance on affordable vinyl banners that end up in Klein's Corners. Or they end up
Yeah.
waving, at traffic.
Flags.
Those are big.
Yeah, and I don't think we address that adequately in the sign ordinance.
Yeah.
Maybe not right away, but maybe
not a
it's
fan.
worth taking a look at least, I think I've mentioned this in the past, looking at the sign ordinance with respect to just that little aspect.
Yeah.
Or the big balloon guys. that-
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's scary when you drive by.
Yes.
Yeah.
And add a ladder and big scissors to the shopping list.
Yes.
Okay,
Exactly, okay.
point taken, though.
Mayor's thing.
I think that,
We're gonna be on this all night long.
Anything else?
No.
All right. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to the next item, which is listed as an action item.
Yeah, I thought this would be a slam dunk, but I could be wrong.
I don't think it's a slam dunk. I'll tell you why in a minute.
oh, boy.
It's, when we discussed this at the last meeting, it's like, oh, yeah, we'll just take it from permissive and put it in conditional use. And I thought, that's all we need to do.
So this item is an action item, commercial zones, C1 and C2. Item 5A, light industry. As you've said, just taking it off one list and putting it in another.
Right.
What I ran into is it's, A, not defined anywhere, really. It's defined in C1 and not in C2. C1 actually, I think it's C1 has a list of potential or like example uses. C2 does not. TAC is never mentioned here.
Small scale processing. No, the TAC is not mentioned here.
And you have the same issue with wastewater and chemicals. That what I envision is, okay, so somebody doesn't want to go to an industrial master plan. They go, I'm going to set up over by that feed store, and what I want to do is chrome plating. Right? That's where your hexavalent chromium comes from. And now, it's on a conditional list, potentially, but what is anybody supposed to look at to decide if it's allowable or not? So this, at least by reference, this probably needs to refer back to other things, like see list in M1.
So what could, we could put something like, C permissive uses in section.
I would just say see uses.
Because I don't think, like, in the when you think of all the commercial areas, if you don't think about where we want to put the industrial zone,
Right.
but it would be hard to have light industry unless it was like on the east side of, the eastern portion of Route 66, like down in there.
Like between the highway, 344 and Williams Ranch, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So, yeah, okay, so we could say,
Just some reference to uses and a reference to wastewater, maybe.
C uses in, what section is it? Section 23?
Section 23,
Yeah.
and it's called light industrial zone. Just so it's not hanging out there by itself as like something for
Yeah,
the,
that's good.
for the developer to define.
Okay, and then the same thing on C2.
Yeah.
And then you were also wanting to mention
Well,
reference to
TAC,
the TAC.
yeah, probably a reference to TAC. If it's a conditional use, anything industrial in M1, we're having TAC look at it.
Well, if they're looking at the uses, won't the TAC already be in there if they look in that area, or do you want to put something?
But if,
You need to mention it here, too.
In,
yeah, we don't have to be shy here about TAC, because if you look at C1 and C2, there is some description in there of what we envision, you know. Light industry is probably the fewest words of anything are devoted to light industry in C1 and C2. And they potentially have the most impact. So we should probably say, you know, proposals will be reviewed by TAC, and adherence to the wastewater ordinance is expected. Sorry to make more work.
No, it's fine.
I just thought this, the way it's, you know, it's so light that it leaves us vulnerable.
And what was that you added about wastewater?
Yeah, that adherence to the wastewater ordinance is expected. I don't know, something like that.
What was that? Say that.
Adherence to the Town of Edgewood wastewater ordinance is expected. I'm thinking of it as a way to get that chemical list thing in there, you know?
Which the TAC committee will also have
That's right.
Mike Butler there as well.
Right.
So it kind of ties up any loophole. I keep looking at the mayor to see if he's signaling, get moving.
Tanya, has anybody ever had a serious discussion with C&M about the growth of, and projections of Edgewood, especially adding something like this? If they've got, I mean, that's so, you know, within their capabilities, or how they would approach it, or anything like that, providing power for this?
No, I mean, not from my office, we haven't. And that's something that we need to.
Because we have 3 water companies, but we don't have 3 power companies.
Yeah.
So it's either going to be, you know, solar, wind, or it's going to be something that comes from them, probably. I'm guessing.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else for light industry? I mean, yeah, C1 and
Commercial?
C2 light industry.
Commercial. I have a question. I'm not really studied the commercial business zone that well. On number 17 on the C2, the sexually oriented business, does anybody know why it would be under permissive, and why does it say Eastville Road and Williams Ranch Road? Just a curiosity question.
Oh, for the sexually oriented business?
Which one are you on?
They wanted it on the boonies, I
Under
guess.
permissive uses on the C2, number 17.
They just wanted it as close to Moriarty as they could get.
Well, personally, I feel like it should be
Yeah.
conditionals.
Yeah.
I don't think you can
Conditional use.
do that constitutionally. Isn't that a constitutional issue?
Yes, yes.
Because the trucks need time to brake for the next exit or something? I don't know. This is very old, though. This has
Yeah,
been
it
around
is.
since the founding of the
Yeah.
town, since incorporation.
I think at some
Actually,
point it would be
the location thing is very recent. That
Is
was
it?
done in 2014.
Mm.
Yeah. I think that it's a U.S. constitutional issue on the permissive versus conditional
Well, it
use.
seems like it'd be conditional because they can't build by schools and all these different things, and you'd have to make sure of all those things. I guess that's why I would think it would be conditional. So I think they're regulated that way.
That's true.
I think that there are some, there have to be certain distance from churches, schools, and,
Well, and if it's governed by state or federal regulation, then it's on them to know it,
yeah.
not on us to police it.
Just curious.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know a sexually oriented permissive use. I can't describe it, but I know it when I see it. Like Potter Stewart.
Actually, when this was first addressed, I think it was in the 2003 zoning ordinance, and there was an attempt then to just outlaw them, and the lawyer
Oh.
said, no, no.
That may be what I'm remembering.
Yeah. I think-
It was way back in the day.
right.
Okay, just wanted to throw that out since I was looking at it.
Okay.
Just kind of curious.
Excellent question.
It's hot.
Not much that we can do about it, so.
You might want to move it farther east. Probably be out of Edgewood then.
So anything else on that one? Commercial zones, C1 and C2, you have what you need to make a few revisions?
Yeah, I made them, so if you guys have anything else, we can maybe pass it tonight. Add it to the list, ready to go.
I do have one more thing.
Sure.
It's brought up by Sandy last week. She mentioned that she didn't think that, I think surveyors, some of these, she didn't seem to think belonged in industrial area, that it belonged in commercial. So, I don't know, but we might want to discuss that just a bit.
I think, yeah, that's a good point. There is a
That was her
line,
points.
so do we want to draw a hard and fast line, or do we want kind of a blurred line between certain businesses there?
That particular business, I think it could be appropriate in either zone.
I think it's already pretty much allowed in a commercial zone. I think we're just saying that we could have something like that. It doesn't have to be light industry down there. It could be,
Besides, instead of being in a commercial zone, say a surveyor who has an office there and serves people who come in needing his or her services, they may want to be part of a master plan where their customers are the people
Yeah.
right around them.
Right.
So two different options for the same service, whatever fits best for them.
One of the things I noticed about other jurisdictions who do this is they tend to blur the line a little bit and even allow some personal service type small businesses that are geared towards serving the people in that area. So, you'll have a food truck, possibly a barber shop or something.
That's serving that area.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the thing that they look at is they try to avoid things that are going to avoid things that are drawing people in from residential areas or commercial areas, driving out there to do it. So whatever they put in there needs to have its primary customers either be within the business park or they're maybe assembling components to ship out. They're not
Well,
that involved.
if we were to get a brewery, most of them do have it open to the public, and they're often in industrial areas. So it's on a conditional use, but
Right.
I'm thinking right away of a restaurant in Boston called No Name, a seafood restaurant. I was the only person in there who was not a fisherman. They're situated in a storefront on the wharf, on a
Right.
working wharf, and their clientele are primarily
Right.
people working there,
That's a good example.
and they're hard to find.
Cape Cod has one called the Black Cat like that.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything else on this? Should we,
I
well,
got
should we?
one more thing on the recreational vehicle campgrounds.
Yeah.
I was kind of looking at that for things that weren't in there. If we have a recreational vehicle campground, and it's got pretty cheap monthly rent, you get somebody in a fifth wheel, I could retire there and just pay rent. Is this supposed to allow that? It could turn in to a mobile home park without mobile homes, with just fifth wheels and trailers.
And that's fine, if they want
That
to
would
live
be
in
okay.
there. That's the place to do it at, not on,
Not in residential.
not in a, on a lot in a residential area.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's.
It
that's-
sounded more, from reading all through it, it sounded more like people camping out.
It's usually short-term, but
But
there's
it
some
could
people
be-
that live there.
People that just live there.
I
Could
know
be
several
me.
people who do.
It could be me in a couple of more years.
No yard
Okay.
work. No
Yeah.
mowing.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So with that, I mean, if someone wants to make a motion to go ahead and approve this with the changes that we've all discussed for Tanya to make, we can go ahead and take action on that tonight if we like.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we move forward with sending the changes regarding light industry in zones C1 and C2 forward with recommendation, including the changes that were suggested tonight.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Now, it's on you to, there's stuff in the industrial zone in M1 that they're not going to be seeing. They're going to see just the corner
Yeah.
of
Right.
it, so you'll have to fill in that gap. All right, that takes us to another discussion item, discussion of the concept of appeal of record.
I really like this one.
So this is another change to the subdivision ordinance, right?
And zoning.
And zoning, that stipulates that the appeals method will be appeal of record. What's documented in the record by P and Z,
Right,
not a de novo
right,
here.
exactly. So I also gave you an email from the lawyer. Because I had sent back saying that we wanted another choice that the town council could have is to remand it back to planning and zoning for further consideration.
Said no.
And he didn't like that because of the 35-day rule that's in the state statute.
I think that's probably, from a logistics standpoint, a good one, because when you get appeals, they tend to be political hot potatoes, and you can end up in a years-long feedback of sending stuff back for another bite, and I think it's probably better. And if it's more compliant with state statute, then I'm even more in favor of it. So, at some point, you have to dig in and make a decision.
Yeah.
So the mayor and I were talking earlier about it would be odd for somebody to appeal a final plat, because before anybody, I mean, it could happen, but before we would bring a final plat to you guys, we would make sure that everything has been met. So I think it'd be weird. I think the only way it could be is if you had an angry neighbor, which could definitely happen. But I do see what you're saying. I mean, you could blow through that 35 days. You could easily. But I just think, have you ever seen a final plat be appealed?
Never have.
Yeah, it's usually a
don't think-
prelim.
The only, well, if you read through, though, the whole statute in context, I think that what was intended when this was written isn't what came out at the end, because the intent seems to be to prevent towns from getting a subdivision application into the office and then just filing it and not bringing it forward. But then the language kind of changes when you get the part that you had highlighted there. So that's kind of one of those oddities in state statute that's kind of hard to tease out. But, yeah. And the thing, too, is that if you had an appeal where that was remanded to P and Z, you still have publication requirements, right? If you had rehearing, and so I don't think it would be practical.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
may
Mr.
I
Mayor.
address staff and yourselves? Tanya, I did find my old stuff here. That's all it had on, right there, on final.
Okay.
So what we had spoken about, like she said, was, what would you do on that 35-day stuff? And I get what they're talking about. Commissioner Turner, you'll remember our old ordinance, and it had that in there on the appeal of a preliminary plat, and that's where that language was about returning it back to the commission for some reconsideration. It did not have the same thing in for a final plat. The only other thing that spoke to anything in that one was the little paragraph on appeal at the very end of the ordinance. So maybe it should be a little more specific, maybe something about preliminary in one place, and then just the stuff here about being a decision of record. And leave out the stuff about the remanding it back to P&Z with instructions or something. I think in the whole, the idea of switching to the appeal of record is much better. Saves the applicant from having to put on 2 shows. And just lets you get to the heart of the matter. It's not even quasi judicial, I don't think, as I understood it from Mr. Audio.
So that was one thing, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to confirm. These appeals would be administrative, not quasi-judicial. Heard as a...
Kinda. He
Okay.
sort of said it would be like wouldn't be quasi judicial or anything, it'd just be a hearing in front of the council.
Would there be, would it save the applicant from having to pay for all the notifications and so forth? I mean, it would be advertised as a regular agenda item?
I kind of think so.
Okay.
That's the way I understood it.
So it wouldn't be like the 2-week notice and publication in the paper and putting up
Right.
of signs and all of that?
I think that's the way I took it from him.
Because we'd already done it.
Right. So you're
Right.
saying that we'd had the public hearing the first time?
Right. In other words, the public hearing is at this level,
Right.
just like the court hearing is at the district
There's
level.
nothing new that will go on that the public needs to know.
Right.
Might
In other
go on.
words, you have the record, any exhibits, anything like that, that's compiled and presented as part of the record, and then you have the minutes, the findings, your usual paperwork, and like he said, the person who's the appellant couldn't get up here and, state their case why they think it should be whatever, approved or denied or whatever, it sends them up here, but you pretty much just go with it like that.
The reason I raised that question is that, when you go back and do over as a public hearing, that's time and money
Yep.
for the town, for the applicant. And when you have those remanding and going back and forth, that gets very complicated and expensive. And expensive of time and money, so.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
don't
Chairman,
like it.
Commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I do worry a little bit about a situation where an appellate would speak in public comment about their proposal and unwittingly, perhaps, initiate in council a number of questions that basically become,
I do know about
Become
hearing.
another
Yes.
hearing, you're right.
it's something we have to be really careful of.
May have to segregate, like I said,
Yeah.
for preliminary and then another for
Yeah.
final and everything else.
Well, and I have complete faith that you are going to make it really clear to council on a given agenda exactly what it is they're looking at and what they can and can't do with what they're looking at. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, perfect. So more discussion on this?
That's all we had.
Then you don't need us to do anything at all
We'll bring it back for,
at this point.
yeah, we'll bring it back.
Rework it and we'll take another look at it and get it approved.
Yes.
All right. So that takes us to another discussion item, the reference guide.
We only got to page what is it, 28, 30? Still working on the rest of it. But I thought this was a good start, and not that we have to do all 30 pages tonight, but I just wanted to give you guys something to start working on.
Honestly, I looked at it, my first thought was, this is a half-day training, as well as a book.
Absolutely. Pretty amazing, though.
It's a lot of good material.
Yes. This definitely, I'm telling you, has got to go to NMLZO. It has to. At some point, it needs to be a training.
Not this one. You'll get it.
You could lead the charge, Mayor.
Oh, I saw that today.
Do you know, do other communities, I mean, you've experienced some of them, do they have a reference like this?
No.
We looked for it, couldn't find it, that's why.
Want to sell it?
We should have copyrighted it,
Yeah.
I guess.
I thought the best written part of it was the site visits, because I've always had a little apprehension about the site visit when they say you can't talk, you know, when you're away from the headquarters or something.
Yeah.
So it seemed like that was brought out pretty strongly.
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, what are you all doing on it tonight? Or what have you been, you said you were writing something up? Have you got something to,
This is the version that Janelle sent me that had some markups already on it.
yeah.
And I retyped it because of formatting, but we got to page 30, so I just wanted to leave it open to see what they wanted to work on tonight. And we can move on from there.
Only two things, besides the fact that it warrants a training. Two things jumped out at me, a couple of references. One is to Eli Mina's Guide to Note-Taking or Minute-Taking. That it would benefit from a URL. And I found a couple of them. One of them is where you can buy his stuff for like $45. The other one is like, you know, free and open. I think his original, it's short. It's from British Columbia.
Tanya, do you have at the end the references page? There may be a URL there.
Okay.
I've got whatever you sent me. It's
Okay,
in
yeah,
there.
it might be on that last section for the references, there may be a URL. I don't remember at this point. It's been too many years.
The other one that jumped out, because it had no citation, you know, it didn't say 27, where I could go look in the references, was a reference to batter shell. That word probably should not be out there without some explanation as to what it is.
There is a reference on the reference page
Okay.
to that, of where we got it, which was kind of secondhand. There was a memo from an NMLZO training that I think that I
Right.
pointed back to that, but that's a good question, so.
I mean, I think about somebody who's willing to serve on P and Z, who's a good choice, who maybe moved here from another state 2
They
years
would-
ago.
Yeah.
And needs to have that filled in. So just as long as that stuff's there.
But we do need to make a note to put a reference. There should be something on the reference page, but in the body of the text, it needs to point to that. So if it's not there, we need to put that
Okay.
in.
Page 18.
Page 18, okay.
These were the, you know, it's the only stuff that jumped out at me. Otherwise,
Okay.
I was going, gosh, I wish I had one of these a year ago.
I double checked to see if I had something, and I
They
didn't
never
find
gave it to
anything.
you. Because,
That I thought,
yeah.
that one, I didn't.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to thank you for bringing that up, because when the commission undertook this to begin with, that was the big thing that was thrown at us. You must stay within the law, and you
Oh.
must cite what you're, you know, you must cite your sources. So, page 18. Where is that? Yeah. Tanya, did you not type the references that I had in the parentheses, in the brackets,
I did. Whatever
whatever was there?
you had, I typed.
Okay.
See, references like page 27, references 2, semicolon 3, DJ
Right.
512. Yeah, they're all throughout there.
Now I'm looking for it again.
I see it up here on page 18,
Yeah.
1A.
Yeah, there it is.
It's in 1A. And it's actually should be Battershall versus City of Albuquerque to give the full title. I thought it was kind of interesting, too, that NMLZO is still referencing that case.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a gold
Yeah.
standard for how you do the public hearing, so.
What else?
What about the scripts, Mr. Chairman? I know you were mentioning you had some changes of.
I'm using parts of this, and I had those not knowing where I got them. Now I know where I got them. And I added to it my own actual, do you solemnly swear to blah, 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 because I think that's missing
Okay.
from what's in here. And then the other one I have is suggested order of a public hearing. That probably comes from here. But it leaves off where this one picks up. So probably I would, just weave that in somewhere,
Okay. Well,
just that one paragraph.
right. Well, one thing you might want to know on the history of this came out of the 2010, the then Attorney General, and I forget now who that would have been in 2010, did a kind of a roadshow thing. They went around to various parts of the state and did OMA and NEPA training for town staffs. And a previous chair of the commission actually attended that workshop and came home with some samples. But what has tended to happen is each successive chair has kind of tweaked that script so that it works with the latest information and what you're comfortable with. So definitely feel free if you'd like to recast it.
Well, mine are laminated. I'm that comfortable with it.
So, yeah. bring it
You'll
in.
see me at public hearings like, this is what tells me the order of things, and this is what tells me what to say.
Right. I think that one is for the start, though, right?
Mhm.
It's mostly to get the thing opened up.
Right, this one.
Right.
And this asking, requesting that this has been legally posted. They flow together to an extent, but maybe we can integrate them a little bit.
Yeah.
Did anyone see some things that are obviously out of date in this section? As the first edition, there have been several ordinance changes to the subdivision and zoning ordinance.
I was just going through and typing it, and then I figured I'd go back and start reading it more closely and seeing what we needed to update.
That might be a good thing to do for the next time, before you type up any more, kind of go through, or you might want to finish typing it so that we've got the whole
Yeah.
thing to look at.
Yeah.
I just noticed the list of things for the chair is a lot longer than everybody else's. I'm just saying.
A lot of
We count on you.
responsibility. Yeah.
Yep.
And something else too for you to, I want to throw out to think out. Commissioner Lee reminded me of that with the site visit thing. One of the things that you will find if you hang around long enough is that there are going to be issues that there is no absolute agreement on for things like site visits, and there are some procedural matters where there's a diversity of opinion, and sometimes you kind of have to, I don't know how to put this, as a group, we need to come to an agreement of what works best for us. And site visits are one of those things.
How are we going to implement this guidance here?
I think we talk about it.
Yeah.
And see if we need to change it, if things that we're uncomfortable with. I think one of the big objections to site visits, other than misbehavior and the potential for bad optics if you don't manage it well, is a lot of people will say, coming from a typical town or typical city, why do you need to do site visits? You know, because you've got this flat land. Well, Edgewood has all of this, I mean, you look at the map, different soil types, we've got areas with drainage issues, and so site visits make a little more sense for us to do.
I think you're right, especially over by the airport, that's like a big city, urban area.
Right.
Just a piece of it. And then there's things down by Appaloosa Trail, they're just totally different. So it helped for me to see it anyway. At least I understood it better.
Different developments surrounding the site, maybe, yeah.
Right. And you also have areas too, like when you have drainage issues, you will have an area that, for example, is not in the FEMA floodplain, but the area is subject to flooding. And to me, that's valuable to actually go and look at it. Because you can see evidence of past high
Perfect
water.
example of that is off of Appaloosa up to whatever that trail is, this road is across the top of that. There's a house down there that's clearly a flood potential.
Right. Another area is at Hill Ranch at 344.
Yeah.
So, we've seen water over the road.
Couldn't get home when there was a big pond out there.
Now, you had asked about things that looked like maybe a flash from the past. Does it matter, I mean, the 6 categories of business before us, does it matter that we don't sort them this way? Old business, new business? There was a time on council that we actually did, that they were flagged that way. It's okay
We
with
might
me.
want to, yeah. We
It
might
gives a
want to
nice
change it.
description of what each one means.
Yeah. It's up to you guys how you want it to look. If you want the agenda to look that way, we can do it that way.
Well, the reason that the original purpose for that, and I'm just giving this background because we can say, yeah, that's relevant, let's keep it, or no, we need to change it, is that it had new commissioners coming in cold. They were willing and wanted to be trained, but they'd never done it before. And so we looked at what is the first thing that you see when you start coming to meetings. Well, you get your packet, you get your agenda. So was kind of the organizing principle with this. It was to remind commissioners that had been serving for a while, there's so many details. It was a good refresher to check, especially when you have a thick packet like we do tonight. But the main thing was that the angst of coming in as a new commissioner and being afraid to ask questions, and not knowing.
Or it's taking time to think of what the questions might be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fine the way it is. Although, I'm so proud of myself, I found a typo.
Of course you did.
Page 8, the conclusion of that section, an agenda which has been posted in compliance with the Open Meetings Act must be approved
It must be.
by vote of the commission. It must.
It must. Well, if there's only one, that's
I didn't
pretty
even go
good.
looking for him, that one just popped out.
It could have been my typo, you never know. I'm not the best typist in the world.
Yeah, I think that section's clear enough, though, that agenda items can be described this way. It doesn't mean they're labeled that way. Even if they were in the past. Yeah, and on the next page, Community Guide to Minute Taking. It's mentioned twice, but there is no citation. On page 10, I'm sorry.
You found one.
Oh, now see what I started?
Ooh, Acton.
Yeah.
Acton.
Where was the mush?
I don't know where the mush is.
Where was
Oh,
the
here it
mush?
is. Oh, here it is. Must be approved.
Oh, I must have been tired towards it.
Check your original, Tanya. It could have been mine.
Wall of words.
And some of the stuff, it goes into detail about things we just haven't done recently, closed sessions, tabling,
Yeah.
stuff that just doesn't happen at the moment. Hopefully, it doesn't happen ever.
Well, that's one thing we might want to evaluate, is having the TAC concept included in what we do has rendered a lot of this not that relevant. It might come up, but we have a lot less need to fall back on this because the applications are actually coming to us complete. So, the thing, though, the reason I would caution against stripping all of that out is that it is technically possible for an applicant who doesn't like the way things are going in the office to say, time out, I want a hearing before the commission.
Yeah.
They do have that right to do that. In which case, we might indeed see applications which are not ready for prime time.
Yep.
So,
Okay, what else on that one?
That's it?
We'll just keep working on it.
Yeah, we'll just, that'll be a work in progress.
Right. And as I spot things, I can email them to you.
Yeah,
I think this would be a very valuable thing to devote a training to.
I agree. Yep.
You'd actually go through the guide, turn the guide into a slideshow.
yeah.
Okay, so that's it on that one. So moving on to public comment, we have one person signed in, Linda Holly. The topic is parliamentary procedure.
Chairman,
Welcome.
Commissioners, and staff, good evening. You were just talking about some training. I've got another opportunity for you. I recently attended a Mali training on parliamentary procedure for governing bodies. And I came away from that thinking, oh my gosh, we can have more efficient, effective meetings if we more closely followed proper procedure and became more confident in it. I think that's my issue. I've not used it a lot, and I thought if we can put it into practice and maybe everybody get similar training, I think we'd have maybe shorter meetings too. This was given by Attorney Randy Van Vleck with the Municipal League, and he stated the purpose of his workshop was for us to learn the basics of parliamentary procedure, learn how to make and process motions, and he asked the question, why parliamentary procedure? 1 is to expedite business, 2, ensure justice for all, 3, provide equal treatment for all participants, and 4, help the governing body achieve its purposes. And finally, he stated the principles of parliamentary law as courtesy, order, justice, equality for all, consideration of one matter at a time, right of the majority to prevail, right of the minority to be heard, and right of absentees to be protected. So anyway, I thought he gave a real good presentation, and I was just wondering if there was any interest maybe in the council and the P&Z having a joint workshop. And I had one other suggestion from a member of the governing body, in addition to covering parliamentary procedure, to have a review of the procedure to go into and out of executive or closed session, and what is permitted in executive session. So, I don't know if you want to chew on it a little bit, but I'd kind of like to get this on our calendar sooner rather than later. Mr. Van Vleck said this could be an all-day training. I don't think we want that, but maybe a Friday afternoon or something.
Half-day might be.
Half-day, I think.
Might be feasible.
Yeah. So I just wanted to throw that out and see what you thought.
Thank you for attending. and for bringing the idea to us.
You're welcome.
So we were thinking maybe a Friday afternoon, maybe 11 to 5, we could throw lunch in there, have a working lunch and. Yeah. Is that good?
I have to,
good
yeah, I just need a little bit of notice, so I can.
Yeah.
Were you thinking about later this month, July?
I think July would probably be good. What do you think? What about, either the 12th or the 19th?
12th would work best for me, 19th I'll be out of town.
So 12th? Should we see if Randy can do it then?
Work for me.
July 12th, so, okay. All right. Okay.
Were you going to tell us about the other one on maybe the 23rd?
Yes, I was going to do that matters from staff, so I'll wait.
Yep, that'll work for me. I'll pencil it in right now. 12th is what we prefer. Okay, well, that's public comment, and I thank you for that. It's very useful. And that takes us to matters from the chair and commission members. I got nothing.
Nothing for me
Anyone
tonight.
else?
I don't have anything.
No.
Nobody has no updates? I guess I have just one thing. I want to thank Mr. Cog publicly for the meeting we had, the training. I especially found the segment presented by their attorney very,
Yes.
very, very useful. And I could see my car from the training room. I went looking for parking and happened to find something right on the other side of the park, after all the consternation. So, but my thanks to them. It was really a good
Yeah,
event.
it was.
Okay, so nothing besides that, so that takes us to matters from staff.
So we also have a training with David Campbell. He is an attorney, but he's also a planner for City of Albuquerque. And it's going to be on July 23rd during our commission meeting. So I'm not going to schedule anything that night, we're just going to have that. Okay?
What date is that?
July 23rd. That's the only date. There was 2 dates. We picked the earlier one, and she said, nope, that's not going to work. We'll do the 23rd. So, David Campbell.
Yeah, I'm flying to Boston that day.
The other thing I have in your packets is just some information that we got at that Economic Development Summit. It's just information for you guys to look at. It's interesting. It was a really interesting, kind of a wake-up call of where everything's headed. And rather than go through each slide, you guys can just look at it on your own. But it was really interesting. It was something else that the COG put on. They put on some really great things there. So we got some ideas of, what to start gunning for growth for Edgewood, and it was a really informative 4 hours. So, and that's all I have.
Okey dokey. So calendar update. Next P and Z meeting is June 25th. Action on industrial zone. I'm skeptical.
Probably not.
We'll just call it more discussion of industrial zone.
But we also are going to be having a public hearing that night for secondary quarters conditional use permit.
Oh, okay.
Our first one.
More discussion of the reference guide.
Mhm.
Action on the appeal of record.
I think so.
Okay. And then discussion of development review?
Yeah, we got to beef that up. I may not put all of this on here because of the public hearing, but
Oh, maybe punt that one to the
Yeah.
next meeting. Okay. Anything else? Well, that brings us to adjourning, so all I need is a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.
That was an